back. My name is Mike Mattesi, and on this episode we're going to continue on force anatomy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the lessons that I shared with you in the prior episode and we're going to bring them over to a model, and let's see how that works. And I'll draw it incorrectly and then draw it correctly, and we'll go through that over a few references. So in our first demo, you can see here in the model's arm, right, is what I want to focus on here. I want to put a caveat in here that I'm going to push for drawing an arm, but the whole goal of force, my approach, is to understand the full picture. So when I look at this, I can't help but say, oh, the model's body is sweeping up the back, up to the shoulders. Is a certain reason for like the hanging of the arm. How is that arm different than the other arm? How are they working together? Notice this whole idea in this pose is about the squeezing of the traps. But here we're going to draw the arm because we're talking about the specific anatomy today. So let's draw it wrong. Maybe when I was in high school, I would have said, well, I see the angle of it, and maybe I see the angle of it, so I got my little stick figure. Maybe I put a little ball in there, right? Maybe a little ball at the wrist, and I'd say, wow, that guy's got pretty big deltoid. And here's his upper arm, his forearm muscles, right? And then his hand. So here it is, right? What did I do? I created 3 symmetrical shapes, bad, bad, and bad, which stops me from flowing through the arm. Another thing I did that I would say always watch out for is I started this with just these straight lines. So it's very easy to all of a sudden put these balloons on these straight lines. It kind of traps my brain in this land of symmetry. If I just take these 2 lines and literally just add an arc to them, right? I say, well, you know what? I can see that there's a little bit of curve in that arm. And I do that. That is 1,000 times better because that curve actually hooks up to the curve in the lower arm. Simply put, this is like one long curve really, but it's got an elbow, right? So fair enough, there's an elbow in there, there's a joint. Look at the difference between that and that. This feels like it's got direction. At the very beginning of learning how to draw, I highly recommend that you just take those straight lines and just give them a little punch in the side and just arc them out, right? Just arc them out a little bit. And that in itself will give you much more fluidity because again, a curve will connect to another curve. So what I want to do is I want to get rhythm in here. So we actually come over the deltoid, and this is the way force works for the arm. I'm going to come over the deltoid and then I'm going to sweep down the arm, but I'm going to draw it as an arc, right? I have this idea in mind. It's not like angles aren't important, they are very important, but I want to give it this slight arc. Overall, that arc is straightish, right? And then I'm going to arc my way this way, you see? So now I've arced from here to here. Now look what happens, right? So deltoid goes like this and it connects to this arc. So I have these 2 curves and one slipped right into the next one. The next one drives me down. And then the model beautifully bent his wrist, which sweeps down like this, right? So boom, boom, boom. Now I can say I want to get a little bit of straight to curve in here. So here's my straight because this is my curve. Here, I'll put a C here. There's a C here. This is an S. And then I put a straight in here, right? This is my curve. So this is really one big curve with 2 straights, right? And here is a curve. It's like, where's the straight? Well, believe it or not, you know, if you look at the photograph, there is actually a straight hiding in here, right? So now we have these straight to curve shapes that actually connect, right? Fluidly, forcefully from one to another, from the shoulder to the wrist. Here I have the tricep. Now I'm going to add, again, I'll add a little bit more nuance to this. Triceps more like this, right? But that's still my curved side, okay? The elbow is in here. You'll notice the bicep's pretty darn straight, right? We always think, well, the biceps are curved, but not really. He's not really doing anything with it. And here we are at the elbow. And now I'm down to the forearm. And the forearm has a long arc on the bottom, and it's got a shorter arc on the top. And then I have a straight over here, which ends up usually being like the top of the space between the ulna and the radius. It's pretty flat. Now, sure, is it 100% real yet? No. I can see over here that the deltoid actually is like this, and it dips in a little, there's a little indent in it, and then it pushes back out. I like this curve here, by the way, which is almost a straight, right? It's like barely pushing in a little bit. And you can do that with the straight, it's fine, because remember, this is my curve, right? So this can get pushed in. That helps present the idea that the tricep is round, right? So the tricep's sitting in there, you know, structurally in my mind, I can either turn this into a tube or I turn it into more of a box. I know there's a turning edge sitting about right here. So this is like the back of the tricep and this is the side. There's a little bit of an apex here that you can see in the photograph. There's a subtle change in angle. So what we've done is we've created the silhouette. We've got straight to curve. Here's the deltoid, right? Well, guess what? Straight to curve shape. You know, the tricep over here is being pulled down. This part at the bottom, by the way, is the tendon. It's massive. But every one of these shapes, I could say, like, this is my curve, right, against this straight edge of the outside of the tricep. Here I could say this is my curve against this curve. Notice this curve is bigger and this one's more straight. So it's like I'm creating these talons or teeth of straight to curve triangular shapes throughout the body and how well they work. Now here I've got this tendon. That's a newish kind of shape. It's not the best of force shapes because what I just did is I took a straight and I put a concave against it. The best of the worst is to have two straights that are wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. You'll notice there's no curve in this, but at least there's this act of pinching, right? This act of pinching makes it feel like things are squeezing down. So if you get into some trap where you're like, I don't see the talon, right? I don't see this force straight to curve shape and I see only straights here. Try to get yourself into a place where at least you're going wide to narrow. So there's an arm, right? I can keep going. Here we have Brachioradialis. This is sweeping like this. So notice right here, I'm gonna pull this out here for a second. I have my curve like this and the straight's actually over here for the muscle. And that takes me to about right here. And then I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna flip and push this as my straight, and this is now my curve. So you'll see I kind of created a rhythmic muscle made of two shapes right here. In here hiding is the extensor digitorum. There's like the extensor digitorum minimi. And then over here, you know, you have the ulna, there's a bone going right here. So that's good to know because that's this bump that you see here and that goes from here to here. And then right against the ulna is the extensor carpi ulnaris. And any one of those, no matter how long and thin they are, you know, even if it's a really thin, long muscle, this is my worst case scenario, right? So in the least, you know, I want to try to get that, right? So I can at least do this. I can get wide to narrow going. If I can get a curve pushed in there, you know, a subtle curve against a straight, even better, right? So we went all the way from a really fluid shape because this one's starting the upper arm and it flows like a thick snail right over and around the arm. Everyone's gonna be like, oh dear God, my anatomy is like a thick snail. Let's talk about the leg. We're gonna use this photograph to take a look at the legs. We'll talk about the arms as well, but what I wanna do here is I'll draw the whole pose and I'm gonna break it, right? I'm gonna break it with all this old stuff that I used to do. So I probably in the past would have said, well, you know, there's a stick figure here. He's got his head is like this. Let's see, his shoulder is here and a stick here, right? So something like this and this. And I'm gonna try selling this drawing on eBay afterwards. It's a Mike Mattesi original force drawing. This goes like this goes like this, right? We got his foot here. And then I would add anatomy. It's like, yeah, well, we've got his shoulder, I've got his upper arm and his bicep, right? Got his forearm muscles and we get into his arm, so maybe it's something like this. A trap that I see students break into, especially in the forearm, and let's get down here to the leg, right? Here's, let's say, the knee, is a turkey leg. Reminds me of Disneyland, they sell those like gigantic turkey legs. In my Force Anatomy book, I call this over here the blasphemous egg, and I say blasphemous because it's going against the idea of force, and you end up with this turkey leg. So it's double convex and then double concave, right? So we double push out, right? And we double push in, and then I got the upper leg, I got my knee over here, I got the other leg over here like this, and I got this leg. Maybe I put the blasphemous egg in there and I add another turkey leg to it, right? And there's my drawing. So now let's try this again and fix it, right? Let's try to do this over. Okay, so in this pose, I'm gonna just go for it. I'm gonna give you a full force drawing demo. I feel and see like all this energy moving up into his shoulder this way, right? And then this sweeps down across the other shoulder. Notice what's happening, like look how long this path is. I'm connecting the whole body. I notice that the elbow is sticking outside of his torso there, right? So how far out, and then it's gonna sweep back. Just a little bit of curve starts changing all of this. I'm also using something I call soft touch. I've heard different terms for this. Sometimes I call it ghosting. One of my students, her high school art teacher, actually called this light and swift, which I think is amazing because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm drawing lightly but swiftly, right? We're just trying to move along and move along. So as I do this and I start sweeping around the bottom of the pelvis and around here, I'm coming in with force to sweep into the hip, but it's also starting to insinuate roundness, right? So I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I've got all this roundness in here, right? I've got all this structure that's going on. I rather draw light and swift, right, like quickly, and then sort of adjust, right? That's my preference. I think it's better to make the mistakes quick and early instead of going slowly and trying to do it right the first time. So let's just, you know, gesture it out, right? But use force to gesture it out. And then this leg's on a slight angle. So there's the angle of it. So the angle's fine. You want to be aware of the angle. Here's the roundness of it. But what I really want here is the force of it. I'm going to try to get these rhythms. So here's his knee. This other knee is slightly higher up, right? So it's like right there, but I want it to be rhythmic. Like so. Right, I'm starting to shape out a little bit. I'm like, something like this. It's a rough version of it. I'm just kind of sketching. It's so weird that his foot's so far to the left. I keep feeling like he's just on the edge of balance here. You notice, fortunately, in this, I happened to nail this down. They ended up right where they're supposed to. Yeah! So I think it's the benefit, again, of drawing lightly and swiftly, right? Or with a soft touch approach, right? Like that's actually there. You'll see here I put in a straight line for the back, right in this zone. And here's the curve. So we actually already have a very, very large straight to curve shape that we created very early on. Now our model here is pretty muscular. So you'll notice that his leg goes out like this, and then the quadricep is sticking out and cuts back. So really cool shape. Right in here, it's like this. His musculature is here and his knee pops out, right? You can see his patella in there. But notice the shape, right? Going back to anatomy, look at the silhouette I created. If I really wanted to play this out, because it's hard to see the foreshortening in here, I would make this bigger, right? So look, if I wanted to make this leg really come forward, I would do this. It's two straight lines right now. I just want to show you scale. And I would make this bigger, right? So this thigh would go more like this now, right? And here'd be his knee, and here'd be his patella. Now I could push this force curve in there, but because I started small and I went large, all of a sudden it's like, whoop, right? Like this thing starts coming forward. There's some artists that are really excellent at that. One of my favorites, I would say, is Robert Valley. He does this all the time. His artwork's so based on the idea of playing with those shapes, you know, playing with small to large to fool your brain into thinking, wow, look at all the space, right? Look at all the space in this drawing. There is no space, right? Let's not forget we're on a two-dimensional plane. So here's the shape of the leg we talked about before. I'm going to shape this out a little bit more. I'm going to narrow it down here. Notice I'm falling into a little bit of the trap here of parallelness, right? So I want to keep this curve. I'm going to straighten this out a little bit more and get this ankle over here. So now I fixed it. Very quickly I fixed it. I just narrowed that in. I pushed it in. It got rid of the parallel moment. Better shape. Now look at this leg. Who has a leg like this? This leg is insane, right? Like look at the size of that curve. The knee sticking out. His hamstring is ginormous, right? Like look, it's this big chunk of meat on the back, and then it sweeps in and straightens out. Now that's fine because this guy is still the overpowering curve of force, right? So it's all good. And then in here, this is going to sweep down like this. We've got his knee there. We've got the gastrocnemius. You'll notice in here, it looks like it starts almost parallel. So I'm going to fall back on the best of the worst and have two straight lines that pinch, remember? And then that'll bring me to the heel. His foot's on a slight angle. Always be aware of your perspective, right? It's like slightly dipping down. You know, and then we have his toe in there and the ball of his foot. He's ironically very flat over here, almost like flat-footed, which I know he's not. But so much pressure pushing down that it's like gotten rid of the arch, right? Notice the foot at its simplest, I did a straight to curve as well. You know, in time I can add in there more form and add another shape for the toes, and then, you know, break the shape of the toes out. You know, usually I love punching out the ball of the foot right there, right? And we'll get the toes in there. The quadricep is like this, right? Here's the straight and here's the curve, and this is the shape of the upper leg. And then you have this muscle called the sartorius that comes in here like this, right? So now you have something that looks like a teardrop, but notice it's okay. We don't have the perfect parallelness, right? It's kind of like flowing this way. We got this straight against this curve. The quads, they do almost the same thing, right? So you got this upper quad, which is like a straight to curve, and then you got this quad, and then you have this quad, and then shape number 1, 2, and 3 inside there. So again, little offshoot of anatomy trick of the upper leg. That sartorius splits the leg on that diagonal, and then you get this nice teardrop shape, and you put 3 others in there, and boom, you've got the quads starting to fill out that shape. So here's the deltoid. It's sweeping this way, so I would straighten out the side of it. And then look at that bicep, right? It's like that little ball in there. So I want this, I want that arc in there, and it's okay. I can make it as big as I want, as long as it doesn't get bigger than this, right? Because that's the force side of this. If I wanted to be more picky about this, you'll notice that there's a little bit of an apex push right here, and then it sweeps back, and then it comes around and goes into the elbow like that. And then we're gonna sweep up like this with that curve of force. I'm gonna give myself a loop here just to remember form. You'll notice the inside is pretty darn straight, right? And then it kind of like flexes out a little bit, and that gets us to the elbow. And then his anatomy is like pinching down like this. Again, we have the Brachioradialis and all the friends of the all the friends of the forearm. Bob Ross, yeah, very interesting. Ah, yes, happy little friends. It's a very happy pec. I've gone in some little tangents here and there. We talked about the leg. I want you to see I designed all the shapes of this. The anatomy's all working. All the silhouettes are working. Even the anatomy within the silhouettes themselves are working. You know, I can go in here. We can add all the musculature that I was telling you about, right? Like his quadriceps. But notice the shaping I would use in here. You see? All the shaping itself is still straight to curve shape design. So that's what I want to close with. I want you to be aware to, number one, try not to start with a rigid structure in the first place, right? Because the more rigid you begin, you just keep going down that path, and then you email me and you say, I don't understand why my drawings are so stiff and rigid. Can you please help me learn how to draw with force? And I could tell you right here and now, if you just take those darn straight lines and put some arcs in them, you're already going to start on the right path. Hope this all makes sense. Always feel free to email me. Here I am publicly telling you my email address is mike@drawingforce.com, and I'm always open to you emailing me and trying to answer your questions. Check out the site, check out the books, which is how most people know me, and that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again.
Where would King Arthur be without the Knights of the Round Table? Or Dorothy without the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Cowardly Lion? A hero can only achieve so much without a community. While the ultimate fate of your art quest is in your hands, we'd like to help you by inviting you to join our community of art adventurers at Proko.com. While you probably won't find an elderly wizard with wisdom to spare, nor lovable metallic men on the hunt for a heart, you will find a growing community packed with humans, hobbits, and hobgoblins, all united under the goal of becoming the best artists they can be. When you sign up for a free account, you unlock a world of possibilities with students, mentors, and instructors, all ready to chat, share strategies, offer feedback, and more. So come and join us at Proko.com and start your adventure today.